Hello students, you're welcome to biology class. I am Ejiro Efere. The theme for this lesson is organism at work, and the topic we'll be looking at is transport system part 1. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to define diffusion and osmosis, explain the inadequacies of diffusion as a means of transport, and the need or necessity of a better transport system in the bodies of large and complex unicellular organisms. You should also be able to identify the materials that need to be transported in the bodies of living organisms. And lastly, you should be able to mention some of the media used for transporting substances in the bodies of these organisms. All living organisms move different substances within their bodies. Some of these substances are useful and very important, while some may not be so useful or they are not even needed in the bodies. Most useful substances are gotten from the environment into the bodies of living organisms. They may have to go through various processes before they get to the tissues and cells of the body, where they will be used for various purposes. For example, plants take in raw materials such as carbohydrate from the atmosphere. They also get heat from sunlight, also from the atmosphere. They absorb water from the soil into their tissues, and they use all of these to manufacture food in their bodies. Animals as well consume food substances. The food gets into their body, gets digested, and the nutrients need to be moved and circulated all over the body tissues where they will be used. In the same manner, unwanted substances are also transported from the various parts of the body, that's from the cells and tissues of the body, down to the various excretory organs in order for them to be removed from the body. There are various ways by which substances are moved in the bodies of living organisms. In this lesson, we'll be looking at the various methods and means for transporting substances in the bodies of living organisms. One of such ways is diffusion. Diffusion is a very important phenomenon in the transportation of substances in the bodies of living organisms. It is defined as the movement of the molecules of a substance from a region of higher concentration, I'd like you to take note of this, higher concentration, to a region of lower concentration. As we can see from this diagram, we say diffusion is the movement of molecules. You can see the molecules of a substance enclosed in this circle I'm drawing. These are the molecules of a substance moving from the outside where they are higher in concentration. You can see more of the molecules here than the inside of this cell. This is a cell. So the substance moving from the region of higher concentration into the cell where the concentration is low is known as diffusion. This picture shows two different images before diffusion and after diffusion. In this case, this is before diffusion, where the process of diffusion just began. And if you look at this other one, you could see that the molecules have been evenly distributed both from the outside and the inside of the cell. At that point, we could say diffusion has fully occurred. In diffusion, it is known that substances, whether they are in liquid form, solid form, or gaseous form, are usually in constant or random motions towards all direction. And this is as a result of the collision of the molecules of a substance against one another. In the same manner, when substances dissolve in a liquid material, they are also in random motion towards all direction. And according to diffusion, They move from an area where they are more to an area where they are less. And they do this over a period of time until the concentration of that substance all over the area is equally saturated, as we saw in this diagram. The concentration on the outside and the inside is equally saturated. There is no higher concentration. I'd also like to mention here that whenever the concentration of a substance within a medium, let's say a jar or a bottle or a container or even the environment of a cell, is higher at one end and lower at another end, we call that a diffusion gradient. So ideally, substances are supposed to move from the region where they are more towards or down the diffusion gradient to the region where they are less. So because the substances are more here, or the molecules of a substance are more here, and they are less here, we say this is a diffusion gradient. So the molecules naturally will move from this higher part to the lower parts. A good illustration of diffusion can be seen when a mixture of a colored substance is dropped into a jar of clean and clear water. You drop the mixture here. You could try this at home. You will notice that the colored substance gradually circulates all over the water over a period of time until the molecules in that colored substance are equally saturated in the jar of water, and the water becomes of a uniform color. This is how diffusion works. It also works with gases. Whenever we perceive the smell of a perfume, smell of food, smell of smoke, or the smell of any other substance around us, it will be good you know that the molecules in that substance, be it perfume, smoke, or food, has diffused or moved towards you. That is why you can perceive it. You can also see this when an aerosol, usually insecticide or any other aerosol, is sprayed in a room, or most times when we spray aerosols, you notice that you perceive the smell. This is because the molecules in the aerosol has diffused towards you or has moved towards you. Diffusion occurs in all living cells. There is an important form of diffusion I'll also like you to note. It is called osmosis. It is the diffusion of the molecules of water across a selective membrane. Osmosis is simply defined as the movement of water molecules or any other solvent, may not be water, any other solvent, from the region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration through a semi-permeable membrane. I'd like you to take note of this point as well. Semi-permeable membrane. Semi-permeable membrane there is also known as a selective membrane. It is called a selective membrane because it selects the substances that passes through it. That is, it allows some substances to pass and it disallows or doesn't allow some substances to pass through it. So whenever water passes through such a membrane from the region where the water molecules or water concentration is higher to the region where the water concentration is lower, we call that osmosis. I'd also like you to note that the cell membrane of all living cells is semi-permeable. It doesn't allow every substance to pass through it. So for water to pass through that, it has to be through osmosis. You could see from this diagram, this is a region or a jar containing water molecules, and this other jar has water molecules but in few concentration. These are the molecules of water. So for osmosis, this is the semi-permeable membrane. Assuming this is it, the line here is semi-permeable. Remember, it doesn't allow all substances. For osmosis to occur, these water molecules will have to pass through the semi-permeable membrane from this region or this jar where they are more in concentration or higher in concentration to this other jar where they are less in concentration. Both osmosis and diffusion are called passive transports. They are called passive transport because they do not require any form of energy for the molecules to move. The molecules in all of these substances move freely without the use of energy. There's another type of transport that is called active transport, although we will not discuss that in this lesson. I'd like you to note that as important as diffusion is in the movement of substances across the cells of living organisms, it is not the only means of transport because it is not efficient in all organisms. For small unicellular organisms, that is, organisms that are made up of a single cell, diffusion is a very efficient means of transporting substances in their bodies. This is because these organisms are small. Such organisms are unicellular organisms like amoeba and paramecium. However, diffusion becomes inefficient as these organisms begin to grow bigger in sizes. And as you know, for such unicellular organisms, when they get to a particular size, most of them divide into new daughter cells and they become smaller, and at these small sizes, diffusion can continue to sustain them. However, as these organisms begin to grow bigger and increase in sizes, diffusion becomes inefficient. As you know, these organisms divide into new daughter cells when they get to a particular size. For example, the amoeba, when it gets to a particular big size that is just okay for its survival, it begins to divide as a means of reproduction into new daughter cells or offspring. You see, almost fully divided. And at this point, the new offsprings or daughter cells have been successfully reproduced. At these small sizes, diffusion continues to be efficient. So unicellular organisms such as the amoeba and paramecium can survive and live efficiently through diffusion. But where large organisms are concerned, diffusion is not an efficient means of transport. This is because diffusion occurs only within a distance of 1 millimeter or less. So for organisms whose body size are large and there are so many cells and organs or tissues in their bodies, diffusion alone is not an efficient means of transport. Diffusion works with the surface area to volume ratio. As the sizes of organisms increase, their volume also increases. And as the volume of their bodies increase, the quantity of materials or substances that they will require to survive also increase. For small organisms, we say they have a large or a higher surface area to volume ratio because they have a good surface area or body surface, and yet their body volume is not so large. So for these organisms, they have a large surface by which diffusion can occur and supply all the necessary materials they need within a good time. But for large organisms, they have a low or reduced surface area to volume ratio. That is, they have a lot of cells and tissues in their body in which the body surface is not adequate enough or is not large enough to supply or for diffusion to occur to get materials across to the cells and tissues. A good transport system is one by which substances will pass through in a good time into the cells and the tissues of the body of such organisms in order to supply all that the body requires. So diffusion alone is not efficient for large and complex organisms. The inefficiency of diffusion as a means of transporting materials across the bodies of large and complex unicellular organisms led to the development of a better transport system called the mass flow transport. Mass flow transport. Mass flow transport is a system of transportation whereby a fluid carries substances through the body. So in mass flow transport, you're talking about a fluid flowing all over the bodies of living organisms and transporting various substances along with them. Mass flow transport is a more efficient means of transportation in the bodies of living organisms, and it is commonly found in the bodies of large and complex unicellular organisms. Having looked at the evolution of a better transport system in the bodies of large and complex unicellular organisms, I would like us to take a look at some of the materials that are transported in the bodies of these organisms. For example, in animals, the materials transported include digested food, that is, it is transported from the digestive system into the bloodstream and down to other parts of the body, water, also from the digestive system, nutrients from the digestive system as well, oxygen inhaled from the environment into the lungs or gills or fluid of various organisms, excretory products such as carbon dioxide, urea, and water, hormones, and several other types of substances. Materials transported in the bodies of plants include carbon dioxide, water, mineral salts, mostly from the soil, manufactured food, that is glucose, carbohydrates, as a result of photosynthesis, hormones, such as auxins and cytokinins, color pigments such as flavones, and excretory substances such as oxygen. These various substances are circulated all over the bodies of plants and animals. At this point, I'd like us to look at some of the means or medium by which these substances are circulated in the bodies of living organisms. These substances, or most of the substances circulated in the body or transported in the bodies of living organisms, are usually in aqueous form. And because they are in aqueous form, they are dissolved in fluid and carried all around the body. This fluid in which various substances are dissolved are called transport media. Some of the transport media in the bodies of plants and animals or in the bodies of living organisms are cytoplasm, plant sap, latex, blood, and lymph. We will take a look at these media of transport one after the other. The first one is cytoplasm. You remember cytoplasm, right? It is part of the cell. Cytoplasm is a jelly-like transparent fluid. When we say it's a jelly-like transparent fluid, we mean it is a little bit thick. It is not completely liquid and it is not completely solid. You've seen the gel of a Vaseline, right? That is how the cytoplasm could be sometimes. It is found in all living cells. The cytoplasm is enclosed between the cell membrane and the nuclear membrane. So the whole of this part of a cell, is known as the cytoplasm. The cytoplasm is the part of the cell that contains the various organelles of a cell. That is, these organelles are suspended in the fluid of the cytoplasm. It also contains water, and dissolved nutrients. The fluid that's in the cytoplasm, it's always in a slow but steady movement. That is, in almost all living cells, the cytoplasm moves slowly, continuously. This movement of cytoplasm is called cytoplasmic streaming. It is called cytoplasmic streaming or cytoplasmic movement. Cytoplasmic streaming helps in the transportation of substances around a cell. And cytoplasmic streaming is a very important medium in the transportation of substances within unicellular organisms. Remember, these organisms are made up of just one cells. They are also important means or medium of movement in both plant and animal cells. The second transport medium we'll be looking at is plant sap. Sap is a watery fluid that is found in the vascular tissues of higher plants. Vascular tissues include tissues such as the xylem and phloem tissues. Remember, it is not all plants that have vascular tissues. It is only found in higher plants. Plant sap is made up of water and a mixture of various substances. You could see a picture of plant sap. I said is a watery fluid found in vascular tissues of higher plants. The sap found in the xylem tissue is a little bit different from the sap found in the phloem tissue. That of the xylem consists of water, hormones, mineral elements, and other nutrients dissolved in it. But bulk of the xylem sap is made up of water and mineral elements. Sap or xylem sap flows from the roots of a plant to the stems and leaves where these substances are required. The phloem sap. Phloem sap consists majorly of manufactured sugars. It is carbohydrates, unlike the xylem sap that has more of water and mineral salts. It also has water and other molecules dissolved in it. It flows from the leaves to other parts of the plant, such as the stems and roots, where this manufactured food will be used. Plant sap is what most insects try to get when they feed on plants. As you can see from this image or this picture, an insect is trying to suck the sap out of the stem of this plant. The plant sap circulates all over the bodies of plants, distributing these substances across plants. The next or the third transport medium is plant latex. It is also found in plants. Latex is a thick milky fluid that is transported in special tissues. In this case, it is not xylem or phloem. There are special tissues that transport latex. Latex contains chemicals and proteins that are harmful to herbivorous animals, such as herbivorous insects. These herbivorous animals or insects feed and destroy various parts of plants. So the latex is supposed to scare these animals or insects away from the plants. Latex is usually transported to points of damage on plants. When they are transported to these points of damage, they act as defense against the herbivorous insect. As you could see, and an insect being trapped in plant latex. At this point, we'll be looking at the medium of transport that is found in the bodies of animals, and it is called blood. Blood is a tissue that is in the form of liquid. Blood consists of several cells that are suspended in a fluid. It is a primary transport fluid in the bodies of animals. The blood circulates all over the bodies of animals, transporting required and useful substances to the tissues of the animals, and also taking away or transporting waste or waste products away from the tissues and cells of animals. The blood of vertebrates consists majorly of plasma, which is a fluid, and blood cells. To see the diagram of the blood of vertebrates. Now we'll look at the plasma found in the blood of vertebrate and the other components of the blood of vertebrates. Plasma is a pale yellow liquid found in the blood of vertebrates. In order for someone to observe the plasma in the blood of vertebrates, one may need to extract blood into a vessel such as this, keep the blood for a while to settle down, and after a couple of minutes, you will discover that the blood cells have comfortably settled down at the bottom of the jar, and the plasma can be clearly seen at the top part of the jar. As you can see, this is the plasma. These are the blood cells. I said it's a pale yellow fluid. The plasma contains substances such as plasma protein, glucose, antibodies, hormones, enzymes, carbon dioxide, and digested food materials. All of these substances are transported in the plasma along the blood to all parts of the body. The blood cells. Blood cells are a group of cells that make up the blood tissue. They include red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelet cells. If you look at this diagram of a blood tissue, it's a blood vessel, you will see different shapes and sizes of cells. The red blood, this is the white blood cells, and this is a platelet cell. We look at the red blood cells. The red blood cells are the cells that give the blood of vertebrates its red color. Red blood cells are also called erythrocytes. They are the most abundant cells in the blood tissue. Red blood cells are flat and circular with depression on both sides. You can see the depression, and there's also a depression at the back of this cell. This shape is known as, or it is called biconcave disc. It is flat, circular, and depressed on both sides. The red blood cells transport oxygen all over the bodies of animals, and it does this with a very important protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a pigment that is red in color. In fact, it is the hemoglobin that makes the red blood cells red. Oxygen from the lungs binds with the hemoglobin in red blood cells inside the red blood cells, and it is transported along with the blood to the various parts of the body. And I hope you remember that the tissues and cells of the body require oxygen to survive. So hemoglobin gives the red blood cells its red color and also binds with oxygen. I'd also like you to know that mature red blood cells in the bodies of humans do not have nucleus. Although matured red blood cells in the bodies of other vertebrates have nucleus. The white blood cells. These are the second group of cells that are found in the blood. They are also called leukocytes. White blood cells, unlike the red blood cells, have nucleus. They come in different sizes and shapes. That is, there are various types of red blood cells in the blood of vertebrates. White blood cells are part of the body's immune system. They defend the body against diseases. White blood cells usually circulate in the blood until they get a notice or a signal that a part of the body is damaged or threatened. In response to these signals, white blood cells squeeze between cells in the walls of the capillaries and they migrate to the source of signal. They migrate to these areas that are being threatened or damaged and they begin to cause a healing process. You see some of the white blood cells in this blood tissue. There are various types of white blood cells, as I mentioned earlier. They are placed in two groups. We have the granulocytes and the agranulocytes. The granulocytes include white blood cells such as neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophil. They are called granulocytes because they have granules in their cytoplasm. Granules are like seeds or particles all over the cytoplasm. Agranulocytes, on the other hand, do not have granules in their cytoplasm. They include white blood cells such as lymphocytes and monocytes. There's another group of white blood cells called the macrophages. They are matured forms of monocytes. The third type of cells found in the blood tissues are the platelet cells. Platelet cells are fragments of irregular cells that are produced or manufactured in the bone marrow of animals. Platelet cells circulate with the blood all over the body. Platelet cells are very important because they cause clotting to blood and they stop excess bleeding in an injured tissue. So they cause blood clots. You can see some of the platelet cells in this blood tissue. At this point, I'd like us to take a summary of the various functions of blood, although we have mentioned some of them in course of describing the cells of blood. They are: 1. Blood transports oxygen from the lungs to the cells of the body. It does this through the red blood cells. It also transports carbon dioxide from the cells to the lungs for excretion. Also does this through red blood cells. It transports urea from the liver to the kidney for excretion. It does this using the plasma. It transports digested food from the small intestines to the liver and to the various parts of the body. Of course, this is also through the plasma. It transports hormones to all parts of the body through the plasma as well. And blood helps to regulate body temperature. It does this by the means of circulation. Usually, when an animal's body temperature is high, the blood will circulate faster all over the body of that animal in order to dispel excess heat through the body surface. That's for animals. And whenever the body temperature is low, it will circulate at a reduced rate in order to conserve heat in the bodies of animals. So that is the means by which it regulates body temperature. Lastly, blood protects the body from diseases and infection. It does this using the white blood cells. The last medium of transport we'll be looking at is the lymph. The lymph is somewhat related to blood. It is a clear and colorless fluid that is transported in a group of vessels found in the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system is a network of tissues, special tissues and organs that cleans the body and removes unwanted or disease-causing agents such as bacteria and fungi. Lymph is a fluid that contains lymphocytes. Remember, lymphocytes are types of white blood cells. The lymph is formed when plasma from the blood leaks into interstitial spaces in the bodies of animals. Interstitial spaces are tiny spaces between cells. Interstitial spaces. Usually, as blood moves through blood vessels such as arteries and capillaries, the plasma leaks out through the cells of the capillaries into these spaces. The fluid or the plasma in these spaces moves into another group of vessels or tissues known as the lymphatic tissues. And from those tissues, they move into organs called lymphatic organs. The tissues and the organs make up the lymphatic system. The purpose of the lymph we have talked about is to cleanse the body and get rid of unwanted materials. At this point, I would like us to do a summary of all we have discussed in this lesson. First, we said diffusion is the movement of the molecules of a substance from a region of higher concentration to a region of lower concentration. We also mentioned that diffusion alone is not an efficient means of transporting substances in the bodies of large and complex organisms. We said the major transport medium in plants is the plant sap, and the major medium of transport in animals is the blood. To find out how well you've learned from this lesson, I would like us to take this question. The substance that gives the blood its color and helps in the transportation of oxygen in the body of vertebrates is called A. Granulocytes, B. basophil, C. lymphocytes, and D. hemoglobin. The correct answer is D. hemoglobin. It is found in red blood cells. We have come to the end of this lesson. I hope you learned a lot, and I hope at this point you understand the various means and medium by which substances are transported in the bodies of living organisms. I hope to have you in our next class. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.